They say betrayal never comes from your enemies, it comes from the ones you trust most. I didn't believe that until the night I stumbled across David's emails. It was late, the office nearly empty. The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound. David's laptop sat on the desk, screen glowing. He'd stepped out for a call, something urgent. Normally, I wouldn't have even thought of touching it. He was my partner, my brother in arms, but something gnawed at me. His excuses, the sudden deals falling apart, the unexplained tension in his voice. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. One glance turned into another, and before I knew it, I was scrolling through his inbox. And that's when I saw it, dozens of emails. Cold, calculated, damning. David wasn't just lying, he was orchestrating my downfall. He'd been feeding our competitor inside information, rerouting contracts, even forging my signature on documents that painted me as reckless, dishonest, corrupt. In black and white, my life was being dismantled, my chest tightened, my vision blurred. My own partner, the man I trusted with my company, my future, was stabbing me in the back while shaking my hand with a smile. I closed the laptop, heart pounding like a war drum, and forced myself to breathe. Anger was there, burning hot, demanding to explode, but rage was useless. Rage made mistakes, and mistakes get you buried. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his grin, that easy charm he used on investors, clients, even me. But now I knew what it really was, a mask hiding a predator. The next day I watched him differently. Every word he spoke dripped with poison I hadn't noticed before. Every pat on the back felt like a blade sliding deeper. He joked with me, laughed with me, and all I could think was, "You're already digging my grave, aren't you?" I started connecting dots. His sudden late nights, the secret meetings he brushed off, the phone calls he always took in hushed tones. It was all there, right in front of me. I'd just been too blind, too loyal to see it, but betrayal isn't the end. It's a beginning. That night, as I stared at the ceiling in the dark, a vow carved itself into my bones. David thought he was clever, that he'd buried me quietly. But he didn't kill me. He awakened something far more dangerous. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about revenge. The betrayal should have been enough to break me. But the deeper I dug, the uglier it got. I started slow, careful. At night, when David left, I'd stay behind under the excuse of finishing up reports. In reality, I was combing through financial records, client lists, anything that could explain why he'd risk everything we built. What I found made my stomach turn. David wasn't just feeding our competitor for extra cash. He'd set up offshore accounts, multiple, hidden in places only criminals used. Cayman Islands, Belize, shell corporations with fake names. Money was flowing like a river, millions I'd never seen, never approved, all under his control. And that wasn't the worst part. There were names in those transactions, names I recognized. People I knew weren't just businessmen, they were sharks, men who didn't take kindly to loose ends. The kind of people who solved problems with bullets, not lawyers. That's when it hit me. David wasn't just greedy, he wasn't just stabbing me in the back. He was protecting himself, building a safety net. Making sure when it all came crashing down, I would be the one buried under the rubble. I sat there, frozen, staring at the screen. My hands trembled, not from fear but from clarity. This wasn't corporate betrayal, this was survival. David had tied himself to monsters and he was painting me as the scapegoat. The next morning, things felt different. Every word he spoke sounded rehearsed, calculated. Every laugh rang hollow. When he looked at me, I swore I could see it, the cold satisfaction of a man who thought he'd already won. But he hadn't, not yet. That night, a message popped up on my phone. Unknown number, no greeting, no context, just 5 words: "We know everything about you." Chest tightened. I read it again and again, hoping I'd misread. But no, someone, they were already watching me. I stared at the glowing screen in the dark, the words searing into my skull. My first instinct was to delete it, pretend it never came. But deep down, I knew what it meant. David's allies were circling. They weren't just after him, they were after me. Suddenly, paranoia became my shadow. Every car that slowed near my apartment, every stranger's glance, every flicker of movement in the corner of my eye felt like a threat. My phone buzzed again at random hours, cryptic warnings, sometimes just silence on the other end. David, meanwhile, kept smiling. Kept patting me on the back, kept playing the perfect partner while he sharpened the knife. And me, I didn't confront him, not yet, because now I understood this wasn't just betrayal. This was a game of survival, and if I wanted to live, I'd have to outplay him at his own game. Sleep became impossible. Every creak in the floorboards, every buzz of my phone, every passing shadow outside my window, it all felt like a countdown. The message, "We know everything about you," kept replaying in my head like a song stuck on repeat. And the worst part, David acted like nothing had changed. At the office, he was smoother than ever. Laughing with clients, shaking hands, spinning lies with the ease of a man who'd been rehearsing his whole life. He'd walk into my office with that same crooked grin, toss me a coffee like nothing was wrong, and ask about next quarter's goals. I could see it now, the glint in his eye. The way he lingered on my desk, scanning for signs of panic. He wanted me to crack. He wanted me paranoid, sloppy, easy to bury. The texts kept coming, short, sharp, designed to rattle me. We're watching. Don't make mistakes. Your time is almost up. It was worse, just a photo of my apartment door or my car parked outside. Proof they weren't bluffing. I started changing my routines, driving different routes, checking over my shoulder every block. But paranoia has a way of eating at you until you don't know what's real anymore. Then came the night that broke me. I couldn't sleep, so I drove, aimless, just trying to escape the suffocating silence of my apartment. It was past midnight when I saw them, David, standing outside a high-end restaurant, laughing with two men I recognized instantly, not businessmen. Enforcers, the kind of men whose reputations whispered through alleyways. One of them I knew had been indicted for extortion. Another had vanished from the headlines after a witness turned up dead. And there was David, my partner, smiling like he belonged among them. My stomach twisted. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was confirmation. He wasn't just betraying me. He was aligning himself with people who had the power to erase me completely. I snapped a photo from across the street, my hands trembling so badly it came out blurry. Still, it was proof. Proof that David wasn't just dirty, he was dangerous. On the drive back, headlights flared in my rearview mirror, a black SUV. At first, I thought nothing of it, but every turn I made it followed, every lane change it stayed glued behind me. My chest tightened. My hands clenched the wheel. I tried shaking it, taking random exits, looping through back streets, but it stayed there, a predator stalking prey. Finally, I slammed the brakes at a red light. The SUV slowed, paused, then rolled past me like nothing happened. But the message was clear: we see you. We can get to you anytime. That night, as I sat in the dark staring at my door, I realized something brutal. I wasn't safe anywhere, and if I didn't fight back soon, I'd be gone before anyone knew what happened. The morning after the SUV incident, I walked into the office and felt it instantly, eyes on me. The whispers stopped when I passed, conversations cut short. Even the receptionist, who used to greet me with a smile, barely looked up. Something had shifted. By noon, I knew why. An email circulated supposedly from me. Attached was a leaked contract showing kickbacks wired to my personal account. The signature was mine, the bank details were mine, except it wasn't real. Someone had fabricated everything. David, I stormed into his office, ready to rip the smug grin off his face, but he didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, hands folded neatly, and said, "Careful, Jack." The messages stopped for 2 days, just silence, and somehow that was worse. Because when the storm goes quiet, you know it's only gathering strength. On the third night it hit, I was sitting at my desk, nursing cold coffee, when a new message dropped into my inbox. No text, just a file, a video. For a minute, I didn't open it. My hand hovered over the mouse, my heart pounding so loud it felt like it would split my ribs. Finally, I clicked and my world collapsed. On the screen, there I was sitting in some dingy motel room, sliding an envelope full of cash across the table to a man with a scar over his eye. His face was blurred, but mine was crystal clear. My voice, my mannerisms, my clothes. "Take care of him," the me on screen said. "Make it look like an accident." Was a hit order. And it was me, except it wasn't. I had never been in that room. I had never said those words, but the video was flawless. Every detail, my expressions, my tone, even the nervous rub of my thumb against my knuckle, perfectly replicated. A deep fake. David had gone nuclear. This wasn't about stealing money anymore. This was about erasing me, turning me into a criminal, a monster. My stomach knotted. Who would believe me if this leaked? Investors, clients, the police. It wouldn't matter how many times I said it was fake. The evidence would bury me. And then the second video came. This one showed me again, but at a desk piled high with cash, laughing as I counted. My phone buzzed on the table, David's number glowing on the screen. And in the fake recording, I picked up and said, "It's done. He won't be a problem anymore." The setup was perfect. The narrative clear. I was the traitor. I was the criminal. David was the victim. I slammed my laptop shut so hard the screen cracked. My pulse was racing, my skin clammy with sweat. It felt like the walls were closing in. And then my phone buzzed with a final message. "Decide, Jack. Either disappear quietly or let the world see what you've done." I stared at the words until they blurred. The trap was complete, but something inside me hardened. Fear gave way to rage. If David wanted me gone, fine, but I wouldn't go down begging. He thought he was writing the ending of my story. He was wrong. I woke up the next morning with something I hadn't felt in weeks: clarity. The footage from last night was more than evidence. It was a weapon. David thought he had me trapped, but now I had something that could burn his entire house of lies to the ground. But timing was everything. If I went public too early, he'd twist it, bury it under more fakes. I needed to bleed him first. make him doubt his own control, so I set the stage. I uploaded a small clip, just a 5-second snippet of the intruders rifling through my drawers onto an encrypted drive. Then I sent David an anonymous email, no words, just a link. A few hours later, I saw him. He walked into the office looking calm on the surface, but I caught the twitch in his jaw, the flicker in his eyes when he passed me. He knew, he'd seen it, and now he was asking himself, what else does Jack have? That was the beginning of the crack. I pushed further, started planting my own rumors. A whisper here, a quiet suggestion there, hinting that maybe David wasn't the golden boy everyone thought he was. That maybe he'd been playing both sides, lining his pockets while framing me. People didn't believe it at first, but paranoia spreads fast, especially in business. The more confident David acted, the more people started wondering, why is he trying so hard? I could see it working. The isolation that had wrapped around me like a noose was shifting, loosening. A couple of employees who'd avoided me for weeks started making eye contact again. One even warned me quietly, be careful. Things aren't what they look like, exactly what I wanted, but David wasn't stupid. He felt the shift too, and when a snake feels cornered, it strikes. That night I got another message. This time it wasn't text, it was a photo, me taken through the window of my own apartment. I was sitting at my desk, head down, completely unaware. The caption read, "One move too far and you're done." I should have been terrified, but instead I smiled. Because they didn't know I'd already turned my apartment into a trap. The next time they came in, the footage would be clearer, cleaner. Enough to hand to the police, the press, the entire damn world if I wanted, but I didn't want the world, not yet. I wanted David first, face to face, and for that I needed to tighten the noose. Slowly, painfully, it started small. A deal David had been bragging about suddenly fell through. The client backed out last minute, citing unresolved concerns. I didn't have to ask why, I knew my anonymous whispers were working. Then another setback. A shipment delay, a supplier suddenly demanding renegotiations, investors growing quiet, nothing catastrophic on its own, but together it was pressure. And David hated pressure. I watched him in the office, packing more than usual, his perfect hair slightly out of place, his tie loosened just a little too often. His charm was still there, but the polish was cracking, and the paranoia. Oh, it was eating him alive. He started snapping at employees, accusing them of incompetence, demanding meetings at odd hours, repeating himself like he was trying to convince not just them but himself. Once I caught him in his office, door cracked open. He was muttering into his phone, voice sharp, panicked. "I don't care how you do it, just fix it. He's not supposed to have anything." I smiled to myself. He meant me, he knew I had something, but he didn't know how much. That uncertainty was poison, and it was rotting him from the inside. The best part, I didn't even have to move. The footage of his thugs in my apartment was still tucked away, untouched, waiting, but just the hint of it was enough to bend him. By the end of the week, his paranoia was spilling into public view. During a meeting, when a client casually asked about the rumors, David lost it. He slammed his hand on the table, shouting that it was lies, all lies. His voice cracked, his face flushed red, silence followed, heavy, embarrassing. The client excused themselves soon after, deal dead, and that's when I knew I had him, but David wasn't the type to go down quietly. That night as I left the office, I spotted him in the parking lot. He leaned against his car, arms crossed, eyes locked on me. When I passed, he spoke low, almost a whisper. "You think you're clever, Jack? You think you can play games with me? I built this, I own this. And I swear if you push me any further, I'll bury you so deep no one will even remember your name." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. They were wild, frantic, desperate. I leaned close enough for him to feel my breath. "Funny," I said, "because that's exactly what I was about to tell you." For the first time, David didn't smile. He walked away without another word. And I knew his empire was crumbling, and all I had to do was give one last push. By now, David was unraveling in front of everyone. His smile looked forced, his eyes darted too much, his charm slipping like a mask cracking under heat. But paranoia alone wouldn't finish him. I needed a kill shot, so I set the stage. First, I booked a private meeting with one of our biggest clients. The kind of client David couldn't afford to lose. I came armed with two things: the doctored evidence David had made to frame me and the footage of his men breaking into my apartment. I laid it all out piece by piece. Showed the client how the dates didn't line up, how the contracts were forged, how the deepfake video was engineered. Then I played the clip, his men rummaging through my drawers, planting evidence. The client's face went pale. He didn't say much, just nodded slowly and left the room, but I knew what that meant. The seed was planted, and David's credibility was rotting by the minute. Next, I leaked the same evidence anonymously to a journalist I trusted, someone who hated corruption as much as I did, someone who wouldn't stop digging once they caught the scent of blood, and then I waited. The explosion came faster than I expected. News outlets ran with the story. Businessman linked to criminal syndicate, evidence of forgery and coercion surfaces. David's face was plastered everywhere, no longer the smiling golden boy but the snake stripped of its skin. He tried to spin it, of course, held a press conference, stammering through denials, sweating under the lights. But when a reporter asked about the footage of his men in my apartment, his mask shattered. He froze, no charm, no grin, just silence. And silence is louder than any confession. By the time the conference ended, half our investors had pulled out. Clients canceled contracts in waves. His empire wasn't just cracking anymore, it was collapsing. That night I got a call, unknown number. I answered, a voice shaky, desperate. David. What do you want, Jack? Money? The company? Just tell me what you want. For the first time he sounded human, not the predator, not the manipulator, just a man drowning, begging for air. I let the silence stretch, savoring it. Then I said, I don't want your money, I don't want your company, I just want you to feel exactly what I felt, powerless. And now you do. He didn't reply, the line went dead. And for the first time in months, I slept like a man who had taken back his life. When the sun rose the next morning, David's empire was ashes. The media storm didn't slow down, it grew, feeding on itself like wildfire. Every outlet replayed the footage of his men breaking into my apartment. Every article dissected the forged contracts. Every analyst speculated how deep his lies went. By noon, government investigators had launched a formal probe. His accounts were frozen. His office raided, the board cut ties, releasing a statement about betrayal of trust and gross misconduct. Me, I walked into the office not as the accused, but as the man vindicated. Every whisper that once followed me with suspicion now carried awe. They knew the truth. They knew I survived. David, though he was finished, I watched from a distance as security escorted him out of the building. His hair was messy, his tie gone, his face pale. He tried to shout, tried to argue, but nobody listened anymore. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved into his face. Questions barked from every direction, but the man who once controlled every room with his grin now had nothing. No words, no allies, just shame. Later that evening I got one final message. Not from a blocked number, not from some hidden account. From David himself, it read. You win, but this isn't over. I stared at it for a long time. Maybe he was right. Maybe he'd try to claw his way back someday. Maybe men like him never really die. They just hide in the shadows, waiting for a chance. But if he did, I'd be ready, because I wasn't the same man he betrayed. I wasn't the naive partner who trusted blindly. I was forged in the fire he lit under me. And now I knew how to fight. I deleted the message without replying. Some wars don't need a second battle. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, the city lights burning against the sky, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. David was gone. His empire was dust. And me, I had my life back. Revenge hadn't just saved me. It had remade me. The betrayal, the paranoia, the night staring at shadows, it all led here, to this moment, to this quiet victory. And as I walked into the night, I smiled. Because in the end, David had been right about one thing: only one of us could win. And it wasn't him.